Rihanna has just stepped down as the CEO of Savage Fenty, and she replaced her position with someone named Hillary Super. And when I tell you this conversation got me riled up today, y'all, I was on Facebook tussling with the girls, okay? And on this episode of Beyond Her Hustle, I really want to talk about the misconception around ownership and success. And this is a conversation that seems to trigger a lot of people, especially people in the Black community. We get very triggered when it comes to talking about what is success and how important is having 100% ownership. Now, there was a post that was made in a pretty popular Facebook group. I'm not going to necessarily call the person out or the group out, but the post said this. I was hoping that one day she would own 100%, removing Bernard Arnold and pass it down to her children and the Black community. I guess I was just dreaming. Now, when I tell you I was tussling in the comments of this post, because one thing that I am very, very passionate about is the education or the lack thereof regarding business and finance and the corporate world. We have this misconception that if we don't own 100% of something, we are not successful, or we are being a sellout, or we cannot build generational wealth. And that is a lie. It's a flat out lie. So first off, let's talk about what is a CEO. A CEO is a chief executive officer. It is a job title, a job position. Being a CEO does not equal ownership, and having ownership in turn does not equal being a CEO. Now, Rihanna owns about 30% of the Savage Fenty brand. She was the CEO and now she is not. That does not mean she gave up her ownership of the Savage Fenty brand. That just means she is no longer operating as the active CEO. That is one very important concept that we need to understand. And I think the reason why so many people think that she's leaving the brand completely because she stepped down as CEO is because when we're so used to hustling, when we're so used to being a solopreneur who is the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, the accountant, we are the customer service, we're the technical person, we're the software development team, we're the operations team, we're everything. We don't understand that. Maybe not understand is the wrong word, but we have a hard time really conceptualizing the idea that when you build a business, it is a team. So there's a CEO, there's a CMO, there's a CFO, there's all these different people that play these major roles. It's hard to understand that when you are everything, right? And that's how most small businesses are. They're usually solopreneurs and you're doing it all. And so we have a hard time understanding that stepping away from a business does not mean that you don't have equity. That doesn't mean that you don't own anything. And the argument about ownership and equity, sometimes I just get so frustrated with it because owning 100% of zero is still zero. 100% of nothing is nothing. And so I feel like sometimes we want to stand on top of the hill and beat our chests and say, oh, I own it 100%, even though we're struggling, we're hustling, we're living paycheck to paycheck, but you own it, right? We want that pride to say that we own 100% instead of being open to strategic partnerships, instead of being open to other opportunities to bring in other owners or other founders, or maybe sharing a piece of equity in exchange for something even greater. But because we have been brainwashed into thinking that 100% ownership is the only way to wealth, we are missing out on so many opportunities. I would much rather pass down 30% of a $3 billion company than to own 100% of a six-figure company, period. I would much rather have that 30%. I'd rather have a piece of a watermelon than a whole grape. But that comes with letting go of that ego. and letting go of some of that trauma that makes us feel like we have to own something 100% in order for it to have value. The Black community can still build wealth if we are working with other people, other communities, other entities in order to do so. This is a mindset shift that a lot of us need to make. And it's the reason why a lot of people are struggling right now in their business. They're struggling with living paycheck to paycheck and being having a side hustle, being a solopreneur, because we're so afraid to give up anything, because we want to hold on to every little thing. We don't have an abundance mindset. We have a mindset of scarcity, and that is a very dangerous rate to live, because you are missing out on so much. That opportunity cost there can be so great. And when I say that, a lot of times people think that I'm trying to say that we shouldn't own anything, that you should not have ownership in anything, and that's not true, because having equity and ownership is very important. But equity and ownership really only means something if that thing that's being owned is worth something. And so sometimes when we don't have the resources or don't have the connections, we have to align ourselves and participate in these strategic partnerships in order to really grow and elevate to a higher level. This is why I always preach that it is okay to work for a corporate company while you're building your business and your brand, or while you're trying to invest. People look at working for somebody or working with somebody in such a negative light, because the internet has literally fooled so many people into thinking that working for yourself, being your own boss, hustling 24/7 is the only way to wealth. And that is just not true. And that will set us back. And I know that because I was once that person. I was once the person who thought you have to only work for yourself. You cannot work for anybody else. You have to be self-made. You can't partner with people. You got to get it out the mud in order for you to be successful. And what happened with that mindset is that I ended up not building a business. I ended up building a gigantic hustle, a hustle that made a lot of money. But guess what? When you are looking at a hustle and not an actual business infrastructure, one piece of that hustle can break and your entire income stream, your entire business model is done for, because you did not build a true infrastructure. But building a real infrastructure comes with having experience, having information, having knowledge, having those partnerships, those strategic partnerships that can help you take your actual business to the next level. There is no way that you can build a $1 billion brand getting it out the mud. You have to work with people. You have to partner. It is very rare that you will find someone who does have a $1 billion brand. And I'm saying billion with a B, you guys. There are very little people who have a $1 billion brand or business that kept 100% ownership and did not partner with anyone, didn't take any funding, didn't do any of that. It's very rare. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go and build a $1 billion business, but what I'm saying is if you're anything like me, you're probably super ambitious. You have these amazing visions and goals. But as you guys know, this entire brand, Beyond Her Hustle, is about leaving that hustle culture. And a part of leaving hustle culture is understanding that you cannot do everything by yourself, that you should not want to be self-made, that it's okay to build a team to replace yourself in your business, to build an actual business infrastructure that people can invest in, that you can maybe one day go and sell that business, take the money from that and invest it. That's the part that people don't get. And that's the part of the conversation that I was getting very frustrated with when the whole Mayel situation happened. When Mayel ended up selling their business to, I think, Procter and Gamble. People started calling them a sellout. But what they don't realize, that partnership is going to allow them to distribute their products at a much higher level, on a worldwide scale, something that they could not do on their own. And now, if they choose, they can take the money from selling their business and invest it into other minority companies, right? Because that's where the real wealth is being built. Real wealth is not just built from operating in a business for 50 years. Real wealth comes from investing your money. So being able to come up with a large amount of capital and putting that money, maybe investing into, multiple other small businesses, and now you get a piece of equity out of all those companies, so you're making those returns year after year. Or maybe that company sells out and you get a huge return on it. That's how you start compounding that wealth. It's not just making as much money as you can for yourself, having 100% ownership just so that you and your family can eat and that's it. If you think about some of the wealthiest people in this world, it's not because their goal was to only make themselves wealthy. They took their money and they spread the wealth, and they supplied jobs, and they funded other businesses. They invested into real estate, in which real estate houses people, gives companies and businesses a place to run their operation out of. You have to think of business that way and investing that way. And that's why I'm just so glad that I've made the decision to come out of that hustle culture, to see that my money is more than just something to that I need to live off of. It's actually a tool. And now I can use this funds, use this money to invest, and that is going to bring my family wealth. That's going to bring my family ownership. That's going to bring in that generational wealth. We have to start looking at the bigger picture. And I get so fired up and passionate about this conversation because it's something that we're not talking about enough. But because we are so brainwashed by the perceived success that we see online, and we think that, oh, this person owns 100% of everything and they're doing everything and they're making all this money and they're so successful, right? But you don't see the back end. There's a lot of people on the internet right now that don't own 100% of their brand, but they'll never tell you that. But they probably don't own 100%. They probably have investors. There's a lot of people, influencers, YouTubers, that have investors that are investing into their brand so that they can put out the type of content that they put out. 100% ownership should not be the goal all the time. Strategic partnerships, elevated opportunities, having equity, that should absolutely be the goal. And that can look different in many different ways. We just have to start looking at success and wealth differently. We have to stop having such a one-dimensional perspective on what wealth really is, because this is holding a lot of people within our community back, because we are not willing to take those opportunities. We're not willing to take those strategic partnerships. We're not willing to take the investor funding, knowing that we need it to get to where we really want to be, to build that team, to replace yourself in your business. We have to get out of the mindset is that it's just me, me, me. Because then when a business depends on you, what happens when you get sick? What happens if you can't work anymore? Or maybe you just don't want to work, or if you get burned out, then your business is going to suffer. Your income suffers, right? So it's really important for us to understand the significance of Rihanna being able to step down from her CEO position, put somebody else in place who she knows has expertise that Rihanna does not have. Rihanna is obviously an amazing businesswoman, but that does not mean she knows everything. So the woman that is now a CEO of Savage Fenty has a lot of experience as being a CEO of another very large retail brand. And also another thing that we have to consider is that when a company is as large as Savage Fenty, it's not just one person making decisions. I can almost guarantee that Rihanna didn't go in there and say, this is what I want to do. This is the person that I want to hire, and that's it, right? There are board members that also have a say in what goes on in the business. And a lot of people that I saw online, they were upset that it wasn't a Black woman that was chosen. But we don't know what the selection process looked like as far as choosing the CEO. But if you go and research Hillary Super, for what it seems of the information that I found, she seems very well qualified for the role. Sometimes we have to take our emotions out of it and really see the bigger picture and understand that she may have just been the best person for the role at this time. Not everything is a black and white thing. And even her just being a woman at all is still a very big deal. Because if you look at the amount of CEOs that are running a billion-dollar company, not very many of them are women. So that's still a big win. That is still a woman at the head of the company. But I think that we can all learn a lot from this situation with Rihanna stepping down, and really just this conversation overall, and understanding that, like I said before, having 100% of zero is still zero. And any day of the week, I would choose a piece of a watermelon over a whole entire grape, because we have to look at the bigger picture. And if you're someone who wants to escape that hustle culture and you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck and working your bones till they're brittle, we have to start thinking more strategically. We have to start putting our money and our mind to work in different ways. And that's really one of the main revelations that I've had as I have started to denounce hustle culture, is understanding that, even more so than before, understanding that money is just a tool, it's a resource. And so we should be using our money to invest in things that will bring us a return without us having to be the one sitting in the office all day, or be the one on calls all day, or be the one, shipping packages, right? We have to put our money to work. So having 100% ownership of something is not a flex if that something isn't worth much. And if that something is a business that you have to work in 24/7, that's not a flex. And we have to start elevating our mind and just having a more open perception and learning how to actually study business. One thing that I do is that I study people that are wealthy, that are successful, and I study some of the things that they do. And I can tell you that all of all the people that I study, none of them are operating in their business. None. Not one. So we have to start thinking of business on a much larger scale. Even if you don't aspire to have a $1 billion business, maybe you don't even aspire to have $1 million business, but still looking at those companies and finding pieces of what they do and incorporating that into your own business, into your own wealth building strategy, so that you're not having to work 24/7, and you can't even retire. There's so many people that work until they're 70 plus years old. Who wants to do that? Not me. And so we have to start studying these things and figuring out ways where we can incorporate some of those same methods and strategies into our business or into our lifestyle, even if it is on a smaller scale. And there's so many other ways that we can really dive into different parts of this conversation. If you don't take away anything else from this conversation on this episode of Beyond Our Hustle, I want you to take away this one thing. When you start to shift your perspective on what real success and wealth is, you are going to be opened up to a world of many different opportunities that other people might look down on, but it's only because they don't understand. It's only because they have not yet been in the type of rooms that you're going to be in. It's because they have not been presented with the opportunities that you're going to be presented with. And one thing about reaching the level of success that you want to reach is learning how to step outside of ego and making decisions that make the most business sense, that make the most financial sense. And again, it goes back to that healing that trauma, because of a lot of our ego is rooted in traumas that we do have. And I really just hope that you take away that 100% ownership is not always the best route to go. And if you can have opportunities to work with people, work under people, to bring other people on board that can help you grow and expand financially, mentally, business wise, it's okay to take those opportunities, and don't allow people to make you feel bad about that, because success is going to look different for everyone. The path to success is going to look different for everyone, but the last thing that you want to do is have such a large ego that you want to own 100% of everything, and you end up working yourself to death. So we have to learn to let some things go so that we can grow and elevate. So if you appreciate this conversation, I'd love to know your thoughts. This is a conversation that I want to continue having. It's a very important one. Beyond Our Hustle is all about just ditching that hustle culture and learning how to elevate ourselves in all aspects of life. So that's financially, that's mentally, physically, spiritually, every aspect of life. And learning how to elevate so that we can live the life that we truly want to live, because you can have success in all areas. People have tried to convince us that we can't have success in our family, we can't have success in our relationships, we can't have success in our business and our finances all at the same time, and we can. And so that's what Beyond Our Hustle is all about, is really just changing what success looks like and achieving a more holistic approach to wealth. And so I really appreciate you for tuning into this episode of Beyond Her Hustle. You can find this on YouTube, on all the podcast platforms, and I hope that you join our community. Find us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everywhere. Join the community, join in on the conversation, and I'm so glad that you are joining this journey with me on ditching hustle culture and creating a more holistic approach to success and wealth. This is Sierra Nicole, and I will catch you guys on the next episode of Beyond Her Hustle.